The first thing I noticed when I stepped into that over-decorated ballroom was the smell, like someone tried to Febreze over corporate decay. Champagne breath, perfume samples, and the underlying scent of desperation. I adjusted my black blazer, the same one I wore to my last 3 optional work events, and headed for the edge of the room like I always did. No name tag, no smile, just Sarah from Risk. That's what they called me. They bothered to call me anything at all. Sarah from Risk, like I was a footnote in an annual report, not the reason we hadn't tanked in Q3. Across the marble floor, Tiffany Lockwood, blonde, rich, barely sober, was gliding around like she owned the air itself. Which, technically, she kind of did. CEO's daughter. Newly appointed head of events, whatever that meant. She wore a sequin dress that looked like a disco ball got mugged by a bottle of rosé, and a smirk like she was auditioning to play Regina George in a Netflix reboot. Every time she passed by someone, they laughed a little too hard. Mostly men in double-breasted suits trying not to sweat through their speeches. I didn't need a spotlight. I needed a drink. But when I walked over to the bar, the bartender handed champagne to the guy behind me first. It was a junior analyst who'd been here 6 months. I'd been here 8 years. 8 years. Writing the risk reports that saved our skin during the New Jersey data breach. Flagging shady wire transfers no one wanted to talk about. Cleaning up after Tiffany's PR disasters and her daddy's creative accounting. And yet, when the slideshow started on the massive projection screen labeled Lockwood and Price, our people, our power, my name wasn't there. Everyone else from my team had a slide. Even Marcus, who once used Comic Sans on a quarterly report. But not me. I stood there with my glass of lukewarm white wine, pretending not to notice, while my insides started curdling. It was like watching your own erasure in 4K resolution. People clapped. Tiffany made some joke into the mic about work hard, or at least look hot doing it, and everyone laughed. I sipped my drink and imagined throwing the whole glass into the plant behind me. But I didn't. I smiled, always smiling. That's the thing about women like me in places like this. We learn to disappear without vanishing. Blend into the edges. Keep everything running while everyone else takes the credit and the bonuses and the corner offices. Oh, and hey, since you're listening this far, gotta say something real quick. 95% of people who hear these stories never subscribe. If you're one of them, maybe change that today. Give it a like too. Not for me, for the team who helps tell these stories. They read every single comment like it's gold. Helps more than you know. Anyway, back to the ballroom. Tiffany breezed past me, drink in hand, already tipsy enough that her laugh had a slur to it. Didn't see you in the slideshow, Sarah, she chirped, sympathy oozing from her pores like perfume. Must have been an oversight. Then she clinked her glass with mine before drifting back toward her tribe of finance bros and Instagram wives. I stood frozen for a second. Not from shock, not even from rage, just the final little click of a switch I hadn't realized was waiting. Because the thing about being invisible, it makes you a damn good observer. And I had seen everything. Every audit Tiffany's friends brushed off, every discrepancy in her dad's quarterly bonuses, every time an investor's concerns got buried under PR fluff, and I wasn't just Sarah from Risk anymore. I was the one person in this building who knew exactly how to dismantle it from the inside, and someone very, very powerful had been waiting for me to say when. It happened between a signed basketball and a weekend at the CEO's ski lodge. Tiffany tottered back up to the stage, glass of bubbly in one hand, one in the other, probably live streaming herself to her 12,000 followers, who didn't give a damn about charitable tax write-offs. The auctioneer, a sweet older guy in a bow tie who clearly wasn't getting paid enough, had just finished selling off dinner with some partner nobody liked, when Tiffany snatched the mic like she was hosting the damn Oscars. Okay, listen up. She slurred, teeth gleaming like veneers on parade. That was cute, but boring. Need something fun. Something unexpected. I already knew I wasn't gonna like whatever came next, but I didn't move. I just tightened my grip on the stem of my wine glass and watched. Tiffany pointed out into the crowd like a tipsy game show host. How about we auction off my dad's most boring analyst? Some people laughed. A couple choked awkwardly. She turned her spotlight eyes toward me. Come on, Sarah. Been standing over there all night like a sad little candle. Let's put some life in this room. And then, God help me, the spotlight actually moved. A physical, blinding white-hot beam tracked across the ballroom like a missile and landed directly on me. It was like being dissected on a silver platter. I froze. one foot half-turned, like my body was trying to flee before my mind gave permission. I heard someone near the back say, "Wait, is she serious?" Another voice whispered, "Dude, that's Sarah, from Risk." Tiffany doubled down. "Don't all raise your paddles at once," she laughed. "We're talking about the woman who once flagged a decimal point error in a risk matrix like it was national security. She makes Excel spreadsheets cry, more nervous laughter, less laughter, then silence." I stood in that light like it was boiling my skin off. I'd walked through firewalls, survived layoffs, saved this company from a PR nightmare when their algorithm accidentally flagged widows as credit risks, and this was how they wanted to thank me. To their credit, no one actually bid, but not because of some deep respect. No, they didn't bid because no one wanted to be the first to turn her joke into reality. Because then it wouldn't just be Tiffany's cruelty, it would be theirs too. So instead, they let the moment hang, like the smell of burnt popcorn in an elevator. Tiffany, either oblivious or drunk enough not to care, made a mock pout. "Wow, tough crowd. No takers, not even for charity." I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open and swallow me whole. I wanted hell, I don't even know what I wanted. Then I saw him, back by the catering tables. A man in a charcoal suit, standing very still. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't whispering. He wasn't blinking either, just watching. His face was unreadable, sharp eyes, slight tilt of the head. He had the air of someone who wasn't used to being where he didn't want to be, and yet he looked perfectly calm, like he'd been waiting for this moment. Not for me, for the fallout. The spotlight finally shut off. I could breathe again. Tiffany made some half-assed joke about how we all need to laugh sometimes, then stumbled offstage to refill her drink. And me, I did what I always did. Smiled, nodded, made like it was all fine. Like I wasn't dying from the inside out in front of 180 witnesses and an open bar. But something had shifted. I caught the man in the charcoal suit still watching me. He gave the smallest nod, and that's when I knew I wasn't the only one taking notes. I clapped. It's humiliating to admit, but yeah, I actually clapped. Like some well-trained seal at SeaWorld, slapping its fins together while the trainer feeds it humiliation-shaped sardines. The spotlight had just moved off me. Tiffany was already sashaying toward the next cocktail, and there I was, standing under a chandelier that probably cost more than my car, pretending this whole thing was just one big hilarious misunderstanding. Some part of me still thought, maybe if I laugh too, they won't see how much it hurt. People turned away fast. Embarrassment's contagious. After all, nobody wanted to catch mine. A few coworkers gave me pity eyes. One guy from legal muttered something that might have been hanging there, but it was hard to tell. He couldn't meet my gaze. And then, as if on cue, the music started back up. Saxophone jazz. Nothing says back to normal like a little Kenny G after a public corporate flogging. I backed away from the crowd like a ghost in reverse. Quiet, unnoticed, drifting back toward the far edge of the ballroom where the lighting was worse and the silence was better. Found a high-top table no one wanted and posted up like a barfly at a wedding. My drink was still there, the one I hadn't touched since the slideshow. The condensation had made a perfect ring on the white linen, like the glass had been crying in my absence. I stared at it like it held answers. And then, like they were reading from the world's worst sitcom script, HR arrived. Two of them, clipboard guy and yoga Karen. You know the type, moral support smiles, voice pitched just a little too soft, like they're trying to coax a wounded raccoon out of a trash can. "Hey, Sarah," clipboard guy said. "Do you have a minute?" No, I did not. But I nodded anyway. They pulled me aside, just past the curtain that separated the ballroom from the coat check. Karen folded her arms like she was about to lead a guided meditation, just wanted to check in about what happened earlier. With Tiffany, I said nothing. Let the silence do the work. Clipboard guy cleared his throat. Obviously, that wasn't planned, but we think it's important to be a good sport in situations like this. You know, company culture thrives on flexibility and camaraderie. Flexibility, camaraderie. You mean public degradation? Of course, I said with a smile that could have cut granite. I understand completely. Karen relaxed, visibly relieved. We're all just trying to make the night a success. Absolutely, I said, anything for the company. They patted themselves on the back with their eyes and walked off like they'd just defused a bomb. And me, I walked to the bathroom, locked myself in the last stall, sat on the closed lid, and stared at my phone for a long time. No tears, no panic, just stillness. Then I opened the encrypted app I kept buried behind fake folders. Tapped one name, texted 3 words, "It's time." Ready? It was the digital equivalent of flipping the safety off a loaded weapon. 3 dots appeared, typing. Then one word came back, always. I stared at the reply for a full minute, then slid my phone into my clutch and walked out of that bathroom like a woman reborn. No more disappearing. No more swallowing pride like aspirin. The next time they looked at me, I wouldn't be Sarah from Risk. I'd be the storm they'd never forecasted. It started with a typo. 18 months ago, some intern at Lockwood and Price miscategorized a portfolio exposure in a report bound for one of our high-tier investors. A single misplaced decimal point turned a low-risk municipal bond pool into what looked like a ticking debt grenade. Everyone in the chain missed it. Everyone except me. I caught it on a Sunday night, long after everyone had logged off and moved on to their charcuterie boards and Netflix escapism. I wasn't even supposed to be looking at that report. I'd just gotten a feeling. That particular account had always been too quiet. Quiet in the way a locked basement door in a horror movie is quiet. I flagged it, reran the numbers, confirmed the error, and on a whim, forwarded my corrected version to the internal team and directly to the investor's office. A risk move, sure. I could have gotten my hands slapped, but I didn't. Instead, I got a one-line email from someone I'd never spoken to before. Vincent Lang appreciates your discretion. He would like to speak. We didn't talk much, not at first. No phone calls, just the occasional encrypted message. He didn't care for company newsletters or analyst reports. He liked raw data, patterns, signals that told a bigger story. I fed him what I could when I could, wrapped in enough legalese to keep me off HR's radar. And slowly, quietly, a strange sort of rapport built between us. I learned that Lang ran a firm so private, even other private equity firms speculated about it. He was the kind of man who didn't bother to get even. He got everything. I never asked what he wanted from Lockwood and Price. I just gave him the bones to pick clean. And when the time came, Tiffany turned my dignity into confetti under a chandelier. He didn't need convincing. He was already circling. Present day, 2 days after the gala. Lang picked the location, the Conrad, just 2 blocks from headquarters. The kind of hotel where the espresso costs $12 and the lobby smells like subtle power. We met in the lounge. No entourage, no suit armor. He wore a crisp navy shirt with the sleeves rolled once, forearms inked in faded symbols I didn't recognize. His watch cost more than my salary, but he sipped his coffee like a man with all the time in the world. I sat down across from him, trying not to look like someone who'd spent the last 12 hours replaying her own public auction on a loop. You look well, he said, voice calm and neutral. I've been better. He nodded once, then slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a chart, shares, voting rights, financial levers I knew like the back of my hand. Lang had already secured several of our minority stakeholders. Quietly, surgically, I blinked. You've been busy. He didn't smile, just watched me. Then he said like it was a weather update. How soon can I buy this company? No drama, no drum roll. Just a declaration of war dressed as a question. My throat went dry. I looked down at the phone again. At the numbers, the math of it. The math was perfect. There was no counterplay. Not without someone like me on the inside. Someone who knew where the blind spots were buried, where the audit trail ended, and where Tiffany's lipstick-stained fingerprints began. Depends, I said, careful. Are you trying to own it or fix it? He tilted his head, eyes sharp. I don't buy broken things, he said. I buy leverage. I stared at him a second longer, then nodded. You'll have it. For the first time in months, I felt something melt beneath my ribs. A long-held, compressed pressure loosening its grip. Because I wasn't alone anymore. I'd been invisible long enough. It was time for them to see exactly what I'd been building in the dark. The first sign that the tide was shifting came in the form of an email. Tiffany CC'd me on it at 6:07 a.m., an hour she normally reserved for sleeping off Prosecco or booking overpriced Pilates classes. Subject line was, urgent. Can you loop in on these investor questions? The body of the message was chaos wrapped in passive aggression. 3 paragraphs of vague panic and 1 spreadsheet with all the formatting of a ransom note. Apparently, 2 separate institutional investors, both with sizable positions, had started asking very pointed questions. Questions Tiffany couldn't answer, not with Daddy's charm or her usual PR glitter bombs. The queries weren't dramatic on the surface, just quiet, surgical pokes into discrepancies in Q2 versus Q3 forecasting, anomalous expense spikes, a few oddly routed vendor payments. But I knew the language. That wasn't investor curiosity. That was a scalpel sliding between the ribs. I responded with a cheerful happy to help, and blind copied Lang's legal liaison. Then I forwarded the spreadsheet to my private server, annotated the inconsistencies, wrapped it all up in a bow of plausible deniability. One click, one drip of arsenic in the wine glass. Tiffany tried to play it cool for the next week. Tried. She doubled down on her ice queen persona in meetings, cracked jokes at my expense, and even started wearing power suits that made her look like a villain in a CW courtroom drama. But I saw it, the little slip-ups. The way she kept checking her phone mid-sentence, the way her laugh came half a second too late, like her brain was busy running damage control behind her eyes. Then came the retraining. Another email. Subject line, team support opportunity. Translation, babysit someone useless until they either get promoted for nothing or wander off to another firm. Her name was Madison, fresh out of an MBA program that specialized in brunch and buzzwords. Tiffany's former sorority sister, as subtle as a brick through a window, introduced her in the Tuesday all-hands like she was the second coming of financial foresight. Madison's joining as our new VP of Strategic Initiatives, Tiffany said, beaming with white teeth and the enthusiasm of someone handing off a ticking time bomb. Sarah will be helping her get up to speed. I smiled, looking forward to it, and I was. Because what Tiffany didn't realize, what she never realized, was that I wrote half the damn training documentation Madison would be pretending to read. I'd buried enough breadcrumbs in our internal systems to choke Hansel and Gretel, and every click Madison made under my guidance, it echoed in a shadow database already shared with Lang's compliance team. We met 3 times a week in a glass-walled conference room. Madison was bright, I'll give her that. But she was also eager in the way a toddler is eager to drive a semi-truck. Every third sentence began with, Tiff said, followed by some inane observation about synergy or team culture. I nodded, took notes, redirected her onboarding assignments to spreadsheets laced with anomalies I knew Tiffany had approved, and I let her struggle just enough to generate questions. Questions she asked me. Questions I answered with rehearsed pauses and just enough ambiguity to let Lang's auditors draw the rest of the map. Tiffany, meanwhile, kept trying to assert control with the finesse of a cat high on Red Bull. She dropped into our sessions unannounced, made snide comments about ancient systems and outdated protocols, pretending she understood what any of them did. I played dumb, smiled through every insult, even complimented her lipstick one day just to watch her squint, wondering if I was mocking her. She mocked, but she trembled. I could see it. The cracks, twitch in her jaw when she thought no one was looking. The way she gripped her coffee cup like it was a life raft. She was starting to feel it. The pressure of someone smarter than her moving pieces she didn't even know were on the board. And I had all the time in the world to let her feel it deeper. Because revenge doesn't always wear a knife. Sometimes it carries a clipboard and smiles while it signs your empire away. The first domino fell with the sound of paper slapping glass. It was a Tuesday morning. The office had that hollow quiet only a bloated corporate structure can produce. Too many people doing too little, pretending to do too much. I was sipping coffee from my chipped risk department mug, scrolling through an asset rebalancing spreadsheet that would have made a forensic accountant weep with joy, when Tiffany stormed into the executive glass box with her heels clicking like a warning siren. 5 minutes later, the whispers started. Do you hear? She's getting audited. Lang's team flagged her travel expenses, some Dubai thing. By noon, the news was everywhere, passed along like contraband between departments. Tiffany's expense reports had been red flagged during a routine audit, but not by us. Not internal, not even HR. External. Specifically, Lang's forensic finance team. They had quietly requested itemized breakdowns of her reimbursements for the past 2 years. First-class flights for client meetings that coincided with luxury spa stays. Vendor dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, always the same 2 guests. Tiffany and someone with initials that didn't appear on any client ledger. It was surgical, clean, lethal, and the best part, it didn't come from me. Not directly. I'd merely left doors unlocked and paper trails lit well enough for someone competent to find. By Wednesday, CEO himself was pacing in and out of Tiffany's office, voice rising and falling in muffled bursts. Why is Vincent Lang digging into our exec team? How long have they had this access? Who authorized this? I stayed in my cubicle, quiet, invisible, the way they always liked me, until HR came knocking, 2 of them again. clipboard guy and yoga Karen, this time in suits. Sarah, clipboard guy said, voice tight. Can we talk in conference room B? Conference room B was HR code for we're documenting this one. The walls were lined with fake ferns and motivational posters that hadn't been changed since 2009. I walked in calmly, placed my coffee on the table, and waited. Karen cleared her throat. This is just a check-in. A little feedback session, of course. Your recent interactions with senior leadership have raised some concerns. I tilted my head. Like what? There's been a tone, clipboard guy offered. Perceived unwillingness to collaborate. Can you give me an example? He blinked, unprepared. Karen shuffled her papers. This isn't disciplinary, she said quickly. Just proactive conflict mediation. They slid a form across the table. HR speak for shut up and sign or we escalate. I read every word slowly. Took my time. Then I smiled, signed it neatly, and stood. Oh, I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder, I almost forgot. I placed a USB drive on the table, slid it forward with one finger. Recording of this meeting. For my own notes, you understand. Karen paled. Clipboard guy's mouth opened, then shut. Have a good rest of your week, I added, and walked out before they could find the words to stop me. 15 minutes later, that file was in Lang's inbox, along with a tidy little audio package labeled HR Intimidation Audio 6 to 13. That night, I didn't go home. Went to a tiny cocktail bar 2 blocks from the office, sat alone, and drank something aged in a barrel older than Tiffany's career. I stared at the phone as the sky outside turned orange, and I knew it wasn't over yet, because people like Tiffany, they always make one last mistake, one final, spectacular insult. They can't help themselves. They think if they scream loud enough, the glass will stop cracking. But by now, the cracks were spiderwebbing across everything she touched, and I was done holding the glue. The second time she did it, I didn't flinch. Not because it didn't hurt, God, it did. Worse than the first time. The first time was shock. This was calculation, premeditated cruelty, delivered with lipstick, diamonds, and a cocktail in hand. The gala was louder this time, bigger, black tie. 1,000 candles lit the grand ballroom like we were inside a luxury mausoleum. Chandeliers dripped crystals. Champagne poured endlessly. Air was thick with hedge fund testosterone and aging perfume. And Tiffany Lockwood, the CEO's daughter, was right where she always wanted to be. Center stage, drunk on her own relevance. She was wearing silver, floor length, slit up the thigh. A glittering revenge dress, like she knew her throne was starting to wobble, and figured sequins could keep the kingdom together. Her hair was perfect, her cheeks flushed, and her ego completely untethered from reality. Charity auction was already a mess. Someone had just bid 20 grand for a sunset golf trip with our CFO like that wasn't a cry for help. Tiffany, halfway through her 4th glass of whatever she was gulping, took the mic again. She didn't even wait for the auctioneer to finish his sentence. Okay, she said, slurring only slightly. Let's spice this up. There was a ripple through the crowd. Some people laughed, others just waited. She spun slowly, eyes scanning the room. Then she locked onto me. Where's my favorite buzzkill? She purred into the mic. Ah, there she is, Sarah from Risk, our own little spreadsheet sorceress. I was standing near the back. Alone, of course, holding a flute of flat Prosecco I had no intention of drinking. Tiffany pointed at me like I was a novelty, a party favor. Let's have some real fun, she said, voice rising over the music. Who wants to bid on Sarah this time? Come on, we all know she's single, fabulous, and probably has a filing system for her dating life. There it was, the laugh, from the front tables, from the back rows. Some real, some awkward, some from people who didn't even know what they were laughing at. But they laughed anyway, because that's what people do when the powerful humiliate the quiet. They play along. They tell themselves it's a joke, that it doesn't matter. I didn't move, I didn't blink. But I looked down, not because I was ashamed, because I knew what was coming. Tiffany twirled the mic between her fingers, drunk with spotlight. Going once, going twice. No one wants a high-functioning introvert with a pension plan, more laughter. Then a voice, not shouting, just loud enough to cut through the noise like a scalpel. 1 million. The room went dead. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Glasses stopped mid-sip. The DJ, who had been hovering near the stage, lowered his headphones like he'd heard a gunshot. Tiffany blinked, confused. What? Silence. Then the voice again from the back, I said, he repeated, stepping forward. 1 million. The crowd parted, and there he was. Vincent Lang, charcoal suit, no tie, calm as a midnight ocean. He walked slowly, confidently, as if this was all part of a schedule he'd already written. People started whispering. Tiffany's jaw went slack. I didn't mean, but Lang didn't look at her. He looked at me. And I stood tall, because now the game had rules. And I had brought the judge. You could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor. Vincent Lang's shoes echoed like a verdict with every step he took toward the stage. No security, no entourage. Just him, tall, deliberate, and coiled in the kind of stillness that makes men 3 times his size step aside without knowing why. Every head in that ballroom turned to follow him, breath caught mid-chest. The only one still trying to process reality was Tiffany, frozen behind the mic stand like she'd just summoned a demon without reading the fine print. He reached the edge of the stage, looked up at her. Calmly, "I'm sorry, sir," the auctioneer stammered, stepping forward with a nervous smile. We've already moved on from that item." Vincent raised one hand slightly. "No need for volume, just presence. I'm not here to bid." He reached into the inside pocket of his suit and pulled out a leather folio. From it, a document, signed, stamped. Then came the badge, gold embossed, custom. He held it up like a cop showing a warrant. But this wasn't law enforcement, it was ownership. "Vincent Lang," he said, his voice calm but charged, like a thunderstorm disguised as a lullaby. "Principal investor. Lang Strategic Holdings." You could feel the ripple, every exec in the room shifting uncomfortably, every spouse raising an eyebrow. Lang's firm didn't just buy in, they were structured. Vincent stepped onto the stage with the fluidity of a man used to walking into rooms that didn't invite him and leaving with the deed. "As of tonight," he said, taking the mic from Tiffany like he was plucking it from a child, "I am the new majority stakeholder of Lockwood and Price." Dead silence. He didn't blink. "And I'd like you all to know something," he continued, turning slowly to address the stunned sea of donors, executives, and deal sharks. "I didn't invest because of potential, or prestige, or branding." Then he turned to face me. His voice didn't rise, but it cut through the room like piano wire. "She's the only reason I bought in." You could feel it break. The collective gasp, the chorus of whispers. Phones lifted discreetly. A few gasps from the board members, who looked like someone had just thrown a grenade into their tax shelter. Tiffany didn't drop the mic. It slipped from her fingers like it had rejected her touch. It clanged once on the marble, the sound ricocheting through the silence like a gunshot. Lang looked down at it, then back at me, gave a subtle nod. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The message had detonated. The woman mocked on this very stage just weeks ago had just been publicly named the reason for the firm's largest equity acquisition in history, not by some faceless fund or a shadowy shell company. By him. Vincent Lang wasn't just money. He was a scalpel in a world of sledgehammers, and now he owned the building. The board chair stood up near the front, so did the CFO. One by one, you could see the chain reaction unfolding, men and women realizing they were no longer aligned with the daughter of the CEO. They were aligned with me. And Tiffany? She stood there in a puddle of her own glittering silence, lips parted, breath caught, eyes darting around the room for someone, anyone, to save her. But nobody moved, because the power had shifted, irrevocably, and the woman she once mocked as boring now stood on the precipice of every door Tiffany thought was locked forever. Turns out, I had the keys all along. I just waited for the right time to turn them. The next morning didn't begin with fireworks. It began with silence, the kind that hums like static in the bones of a corporate boardroom just before the air gets rearranged. The kind where no one sips their coffee because nobody remembers to breathe. I walked in 5 minutes early, sat at the long mahogany table like I belonged there because now I did. Vincent Lang was already seated at the head. No fanfare, no handshake, just a nod. Tiffany arrived 2 minutes late, still wearing power. It was a costume she could duct tape back together. Her foundation was flawless, her posture stiff. But her eyes, they were wild, searching for allies in a room full of ex-loyalties. The CEO came in last. Gray suit, gray face, gray hands wringing themselves like they wanted to disappear into his sleeves. He didn't make eye contact with anyone, especially not me. The meeting began with numbers. Lang's team presented projections, cleaned up forecasts, margin corrections, asset reallocations that quietly invalidated every vanity project Tiffany had spearheaded. Then came the audit findings. 2 full slides. Personal expenditures misrepresented as client engagements. A retreat in Santorini disguised as cross-departmental synergy development. A digital receipt for a $3,200 bottle of wine signed with a heart emoji. Tiffany tried to interrupt once. Lang raised one eyebrow, and she stopped. HR director, seated awkwardly near the end of the table, cleared his throat. In light of these irregularities, and given the new shareholder structure, we recommend Miss Lockwood be placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full compliance review. The words hit the table like a velvet hammer. The CEO finally looked up, tried to muster some paternal gravitas. "I'm sure there's an explanation, there is," Lang said flatly, turning his gaze to me. "Just never listened to the person who had it." No one spoke, not a single word. The vote passed in under a minute. Tiffany didn't scream, didn't cry, just sat there as the power drained from her body like someone unplugged her battery pack. She tried to hold my stare, but it slipped like water through her fingers. The CEO swallowed whatever pride he had left and said, "And the board would like to formally recognize Sarah's contributions over the last several years." Lang leaned forward. "Effective immediately, Sarah will serve as special advisor to the board. She'll report directly to me, full access. No filter," I nodded, quiet, steady, no clapping, no applause, just the creaking of leather chairs as they all leaned into the new gravity of the room. After the meeting, I gathered my notes, unnecessary, but a habit. As I walked toward the door, I passed the glass wall where HR had once staged their little intervention. Clipboard guy stood outside, awkwardly straightening his tie. And there she was, Karen, Yoga Karen, the same one who told me to be a good sport when Tiffany auctioned me off like discount luggage. She froze when I walked past. I stopped just long enough to meet her eyes, and smiled. Then I stepped into the elevator without a word, rode it down to the lobby, and walked into a morning sun that felt like absolution. My phone buzzed. A message from Vincent. "They'll never underestimate you again." I stared out at the skyline, steel and glass stretching into cloudless sky, and let the silence settle deep. Then I texted back one sentence. "Next time someone calls me boring, tell them it costs at least $1 million. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.